Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the Deep Space Travel Break, Episode 11, brought to you by Traveler's Deck Playing Cards, Nada and Poe's favorite brand of playing cards, available on the Space Anomaly while supplies last. Ask a Korvax, Vy'keen, or Gek, it's the one to own its Traveler's Deck. Get your deck today. Alright, on to housekeeping. As you may or may not have noticed, I've been gone for a couple of weeks. I was out of town on the longest trip of my life, visiting the World's Fair, a lifelong dream of mine. I saw all kinds of things, I've gained a lot of perspective, but it's good to be back home. And while I definitely enjoyed my time abroad, unfortunately, or fortunately for y'all, the No Man's Sky Sentinel update and Expedition 5 EXOBIOLOGY both released while I was out of town. I will be creating videos on these topics, of course, in the following weeks, but since I got here late, I still haven't completed Expedition 5, so I probably won't do a video guide, but, you can still look forward to new content coming soon. Also, unrelated, the Cuphead show also released while I was out of town, so I may or may not do a full review of that, believe it or not. So for those of you who don't know, I'm also a huge Cuphead fan. I've been a fan of Cuphead probably about as long as I've been a fan of No Man's Sky. But that's neither here nor there. Let's look at the latest No Man's Sky news this week, as well as some items I missed before my trip. So the biggest news, of course, is that No Man's Sky Sentinel and Expedition 5 EXOBIOLOGY are both live on all platforms. Expedition 5 will run another 4 weeks or something, I believe, but honestly, don't wait. I would recommend starting as soon as possible. Some of the milestones are kind of grindy, so it'll be good to get started as soon as you can. If you plan to complete it, that is. The week prior to that release, though, Hello Games actually also announced that a Switch version of No Man's Sky is releasing this summer. It's not known yet if multiplayer will be supported or if any other features will be cut, but the gameplay footage they showed looked surprisingly good, so I look forward to that. In more recent news, Hello Games continue to release patches following the latest update. Additionally, new patch notes have been added to the latest experimental branch patches available on Steam. And of course, these changes will follow to consoles soon. So check out the list if you're experiencing any bugs. I'll put the link in the description. And personally, I'm really looking forward to the quick menu toggle for the Minotaur AI that they say is coming soon. So that'll be cool. In other news, data miners have discovered content hidden in the latest update that could actually hint at what's coming next. It's pretty cool. But I won't spoil it for those of you who prefer to be surprised. But for those of you who want to spoil it for yourselves, maybe. It may or may not happen. But for those interested, I've added a link in the description below. And that's the news. Now on to the topic of today's show. Let's dive into all the new content included with No Man's Sky Sentinel. Man, it's good to be back recording podcasts, especially with such an awesome update to talk about. I'll probably do a more detailed, objective review of both Sentinel and EXOBIOLOGY in their respective review series later. But right now, I want to just share my initial thoughts about what 2022 has brought to No Man's Sky. So right off the bat, if you know me, you probably already know I love this update. I've been asking for an update to combat and EXOMechs for a long time. In fact, this almost feels like the update that No Man's Sky EXOMech should have been, but let's not dwell on that when there's so much to celebrate. So let's start with the biggest change. Combat is better. It's no Destiny, no Halo, it's not COD, but it's also no longer a one-note affair. Previously, you could just pick up a weapon and shoot the Sentinels till they exploded. They'd spawn infinitely, and you'd have to run away if you got bored. Pretty boring, actually, to be honest. Now, Sentinel battles are a little spicier, with the addition of new Sentinel types and new weapons and tech for the player to use. So, Sentinels are more difficult now, and that means players need to rely on a new set of tools to stay ahead. For those uninterested in combat, there's also a cloaking device that adds a much-needed stealth mechanic to the game. That lets players who don't want to engage in combat escape safely. It's pretty cool. A new stun grenade also gives players more options for how to control combat. And you can also buff it with certain upgrades and things, so you end up with interesting different playstyles you can develop. Also, a new weapon, the Neutron Cannon, gives players the option for rapid single fire or charged bursts, and that makes it a very versatile new addition to your armory. Speaking of which, they actually finally increased the multi-tool count from 3 to 6. So not a huge increase, but very, very welcome, because now you can actually own one of each, type. And now that they've added a new multi-tool type, it really helps being able to have 6. Speaking of which, the new multi-tool they added, I believe that is the first new multi-tool they have added since launch. So in over 5 years, I think this is the first new multi-tool, which is pretty cool. Now, I wish it was a little more procedural, but it's a great addition nonetheless. On top of all this, new weapon effects, upgrades, camera controls, and combat balance all combine to make No Man's Sky's combat better than it's ever been. All that would have been great on its own, of course, but Hello Games didn't stop there. Finally, at long last, Hello Games have given me the Sentinel combat that I've been craving since Next introduced multi-stage walker combat. I'm talking new Sentinel types, new Sentinel behavior, new Sentinel structures, new Sentinel lore. It's all here. So, let's start with the new Sentinels. Previously, we had drones, armored drones, quads, and walkers. Plus the corrupted ones, but those don't really count. So we still have those basic drones patrolling planets. But now when you engage them in battle, they're instantly joined by a new assortment of danger. Armored drones have been replaced by heavy combat drones, and these guys are awesome. They have like these cool movable armor plates that you can destroy. They have 3 eyes, and they can fire regular blasters, scatter blasters, and grenades. So this is already like really awesome, but it keeps going, because they also added repair drones that rapidly heal other Sentinels, and I do mean rapidly. These are usually my first targets in battle. They go down easily, but if you ignore them, they can make killing other Sentinels, especially the big ones, almost impossible. And if you need to reload, they're gonna take advantage of that too. And then the third new Sentinel type they added is the Summoner class, or a Summoner drone. And those can call in reinforcements if you don't destroy them in time. That means battles can actually vary widely in scope and time depending on how well you actually manage the new enemies. So this new emphasis on strategy makes combat a lot more engaging and satisfying to overcome. I also love how the Summoner drones look like they're wearing pointy hats. All of the new Sentinel designs actually work really well. They're pretty distinct from a distance, and I think it's just good game design, which I appreciate. Of course, all of the stuff I've just described, that's just the first wave. If you defeat that, you'll soon be fighting little Sentinel doggies, you know the ones, little Sentinel quads. And the quads are pretty much unchanged, but they're as deadly as ever. What comes after them, though, is terrifying. If you piss off the Sentinels badly enough, they'll send out a Sentinel hardframe. Now, besides that being the coolest name they could have come up with, the Sentinel mechs also look pretty badass. So they have machine guns, they have flamethrowers, they have jetpacks for crying out loud. I mean, it's pretty cool. Fighting them is like a boss battle, and it's pretty awesome. Especially when you're juggling all of the Sentinels I just mentioned, and then you throw one of these on top of it, it becomes a real challenge, which, again, it's like finally a challenge. Also, side note, it's pretty cool that they added the flamethrower to the game, even though, like, not really, but hopefully they add it as a multi-tool attachment soon, but we'll see. But getting back on track, of course, that's not the final challenge. If you defeat that hard frame, what you get is the final wave, and this final wave is like an all-out battle for the planet. You're facing all the Sentinels I mentioned, you're facing a hard frame, and then suddenly, when you're in the middle of battle, a Sentinel walker lands right in front of you. This thing, it's always been tall, but when you see it tower over the mech and the drones, it looks colossal. Now, they've reworked its mechanics, so in order to destroy it, you only have to disable the armor plates on its head, which makes sense, honestly, because it didn't make much sense before when you had to disable like its shin guard in order to attack its head. So now they fixed that. It has a bit more health, I would say. But what they did instead was if you attack the legs, now you can like temporarily disable it by buckling its legs. And you can use that to deal extra damage, to destroy maybe some healer bots or other things that are bothering you, or just to run away and reload, regroup, regenerate health, which, all valid options. Again, it's pretty cool that they're giving you more choice in battle. Because if you want to just straight up attack its head, if you have good enough shields and weapons, it's a good idea. Or if you need to buy yourself some time and you're not using like a stun grenade or something, they give you an option to implement a little strategy. So I like that kind of stuff. So if somehow you defeat all of these Sentinels, their patrols will actually be temporarily disabled on that planet, and you'll be given the coordinates to one of their pillars, which is a new point of interest you can find on planets. And this is also one of my favorite parts of the update. These new Sentinel pillars can grant you lore, they can possibly give you a royal multi-tool or sell you one. And you can also, if you arrive there without defeating the big wave, like if you have a map or you just find one, you can actually use it to disable the Sentinel patrols on that planet without having to do combat. So again, it's another way for players who don't enjoy combat. You could just use your invisibility module, sneak up to the panel, disable Sentinels for the planet. And it just gives you one more way to sort of interact with the universe and play your own way, right? If you enjoy combat, you can do combat. If you don't enjoy combat, you can disable it for that planet. So really cool. And I think people who build on like planets with aggressive Sentinels, but they're like the perfect paradise planet, this is going to be really great for them because they just have to go to one pillar and disable it and they can enjoy their base in peace. So I'm sure people are going to take advantage of that. So on top of the things I mentioned, there's also a new loot game. So when you destroy different Sentinels, as well as parts of the Sentinel pillars, you're actually given these pieces of glass. I forget what they're called, shards of glass or something. And these can be opened up, and they might provide unique new Sentinel upgrades, which can apply to your weapons or your exosuit. They might provide you a map to a pillar, so you can use that, in the future to avoid battle. They might give you just raw materials or money or something like that. So it's like a whole new loot game. So before, we had archaeology, we had things you could dig up, and we had abandoned freighters you could explore in space. Well, now for players who are looking for another kind of loot game that's a little more engaging and that, you can engage with in almost any planet you choose, now we have that. So it creates another gameplay loop, and it's honestly probably my favorite gameplay loop at the moment. I really enjoy the new combat. So all in all, this is it combines to create a fantastic new take on No Man's Sky's previously almost snore-inducing combat. It wasn't terribly difficult once you got S-Class upgrades. And now even with S-Class upgrades, I'm getting my ass handed to me. So I'd say that's a pretty good improvement. So besides combat changes, the update also included a new storyline that integrates settlement, the travelers at the anomaly, and your exomech. And of course, you know what I'm going to say. This is exactly what I've been hoping for. So by integrating new stories with previously underutilized features, I think the game feels more coherent and more complete. I'm a big fan of the new quest, both for its execution, its story, and its rewards. Speaking of which, Hello Games actually granted 3 more wishes on top of that with this update. So you can now reprogram a Sentinel drone to join you as a little buddy. You can upgrade your Minotaur with an AI pilot to join you in combat and adventure. And you can adopt a Sentinel quad as a companion. So you can actually have all 3 active at once, because they all use different methods. Imagine, you're riding over a hill, right, on your Sentinel quad. And you come over the hill, and you see a Sentinel pillar guarded by a hard frame. On your left, you have your trusty drone, Laylaps. And on your right, you have your reprogrammed Sentinel hard frame Minotaur. And I mean, how cool is that? I feel like No Man's Sky has finally achieved that power fantasy a lot of games go for. And it's pretty awesome to see. Speaking of the Minotaur too, it's finally usable as a vehicle. So it's now hundreds of times more responsive. Its controls, its weapons do actual damage, and its AI function gives it a unique purpose that sets it apart from other exocraft. Which, I mean, this is pretty much what people were actually hoping for when it first released, but, I'm just happy to see that it's finally reached, its full potential, and that they didn't abandon it in favor of new features, which, Hello Games sometimes does. So this is, really great work, and now I absolutely love the exomech, whereas previously I thought it was really lame and disappointing. So, there are a ton of other features included in this update that I could talk about, but I'd also like to briefly cover the new expedition, so let me really quickly just list some of my favorite changes. So we also have, we can have 18 companions instead of 6, that's pretty cool. Sentinels can also place shields while in combat, so those look really cool as well. The new particle effects, they all look really good. Speaking of which, I love the way volcanic eruptions look now. They're way more epic. Factories, I realized, are now guarded by Sentinel hard mechs, which are a lot more intimidating than, say, the little Sentinel quads, especially now that Sentinels can actually navigate inside of buildings and caves, so you can't just run into one of those and hide like he used to. At least you're not supposed to. Let's see. Oh yeah, and did I mention that the plasma grenade won't kill you instantly anymore if you accidentally hit a rock or something? Talk about a lifesaver. But okay, it's time to take a look at Expedition 5. EXOBIOLOGY. It's aight. Honestly, I mean, I was excited at the premise, but a little disappointed with the actual milestones and tasks. So first of all, I think it's weird that it's not a Sentinel-focused expedition or just combat-focused. Not only given the title of the update, but given all the new mechanics they just added. It'd be great to take advantage of those. But I understand a lot of people don't enjoy combat, so maybe that's why they're opting not to do a combat-focused expedition. But still, I would love to see one, obviously. Speaking of which, some of the rewards, particularly like the quad you get at the end of it, they seem like they were kind of tailored towards a Sentinel-themed expedition, but, you know, maybe it just ties into the update overall. The rewards often don't match the expedition, so that's nothing new. So looking at the milestones, some of them honestly seem needlessly tedious, like gaining 16 Explorers Guild standing. Yeah, it's not the end of the world, but it takes a long time, so why 16, right? Why not 12 or 8? You know, I always talk about this with my friend, where we wonder what the benefit is to a certain amount, because after a certain point, you're not gaining anything meaningful from it. For example, one of the milestones is to ride a flying companion for 4,000 units. But why 4,000 units? Why not 2,000 units? Because the reality is this is checking to see if you have a companion that can fly. Right? That's the actual goal with this milestone. Now, it takes a long time to fly 4,000 units. Obviously not that long, but it's not that exciting. You're not in combat, and it doesn't use up resources or take any kind of skill. It kind of automatically flies on its own. So 4,000 units doesn't require anything extra of the player except their time, which is why it feels like such a waste of time, because it doesn't give us anything in return that, say, 2,000 units couldn't accomplish, or even 1,000. And then you look at other stuff like the collecting 5 of each of 4 kinds of milk or 3 kinds of egg. It just kind of feels like busy work in the vein of like Expedition 1, but not as bad. And, you know, I kind of wish they hadn't gone back in that direction, especially with how good, you know, Expedition 4 was about that. Now, I understand that, you know, it should take some amount of time to do an expedition, and they shouldn't really be rushed, but what's sad is I kind of find myself more excited to jump into my normal save and fight Sentinels, you know, and hunt royal multi-tools than I do to collect, you know, 50 balls of poop. But that being said, and despite my negativity, truth be told, I'm actually enjoying this expedition greatly. So I don't find myself looking forward to each play session, but when I do actually log in, I enjoy every minute of it. Of course, that's probably more a testament to the game's incredible stack of features than the expedition itself. But luckily, the rewards are really cool, most notably the Sentinel Quad Companion. Unlike the biological horror companion from Expedition 3, the quad's something I've wanted since before the game released. I think there's a trailer where there's like 3 walking next to you. I always thought that was so cool, so now I can finally live that, you know, more or less. Even if it doesn't really have anything to do with the expedition, you know, whatever. One thing that I'm actually, and this might be controversial, but one thing I'm actually glad is in there, and I've seen people complain about this, so, you know, let me know in the comments below how wrong I am. But I'm pretty happy that there's cooking in this expedition. it hasn't been in the past 4 expeditions, and it's probably the least utilized feature in the game next to like exocraft races. So alongside that, they also finally updated cooking a little bit to where now before you eat something, it tells you what the status effect is, which I know not a big deal, but it's actually pretty cool. It makes food just slightly more useful, because now if you collect food and you see it has a certain, effect, you might want to keep that on you in case you need to, replenish your health. Or one of them gave you like a sprint boost, similar to the plants that let you have a jetpack burst. So you can sprint for an unlimited duration during a certain amount of time, and that's pretty cool. So things like that, I really hope they keep improving. Of course, some of you are probably asking, why am I so interested in cooking? Like, do I enjoy cooking in real life? Is it something I like? No, not particularly. But I do think it holds a lot of potential between, finding exotic ingredients and recipes through exploration, which I always love more exploration, as well as it could possibly be used to add depth to planetary settlements. But if you've seen that, I put that in another podcast episode, but the idea that, the bar or your market might sell exclusive procedural food. So I think there's a lot of room to grow with that feature, but that's another conversation. Overall, though, to get back on topic, I'm not really impressed with the expedition, especially as a follow-up to Emergence. But I do like the pattern of releasing an update, followed by an expedition like a week later. If we continue to see this release pattern throughout the year, then we may just have another golden year on our hands. Because this update was honestly one of the better ones, so here's hoping. Alright, so to close out this episode, I'd like to sum up my thoughts. I think Sentinel was a phenomenal update. It focused on improving, expanding, and integrating existing game mechanics, as opposed to adding new, shallow ones. The first new multi-tools in over 5 years, new loot game, and quests also expanded the game in satisfying ways, at least to me. And overall, I think it's exactly what the game needed. Let me know what you think, though, in the comments below. Do you enjoy the new combat? Or are you glad they added a way to escape it? Are you hunting for the new multi-tool, or could you not care less? What about the new expedition? Are you giving it a try, or does it bore you? I'd love to see what y'all think. Also, thanks for supporting the channel. We're getting really close to 400 subscribers. Like, really close. And again, I'm still aiming for 1,000 so I can unlock all the community features like polls and stuff. So, if you're listening to this and you're not subscribed, you can make the difference. I mean, literally every subscriber makes a difference when you're this small of a channel. And I do check my subscriber count every day. I know that's kind of pathetic, but at this size, every subscriber really does make a difference. So if you're not ready to subscribe yet, no worries. If you just leave a like on the video, that helps too. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a great time exploring the universe. Stay safe out there and have a good one. Bye!